Welcome to our media presentation on cognitive theory. Cognitive theory is a form of psychotherapy which focuses on the role of thoughts in behavior. You cannot talk about cognitive theory without understanding the connection to behavioralism. They go hand in hand as thoughts elicit actions. If we want to change an action, we must first look at the thought that is creating that action. Behavioral theory teaches that behaviors can be influenced by stimulus prior to the response, which is Pavlov's classical conditioning. Skinner reported that what strengthens the behavior is the consequences after the behavior, or operant conditioning. This is where cognitive theory shines, because the reinforcers provided are not always going to be the same for higher level thinking. Reinforcers are less likely to work if a person is not interested in them. For example, if poor performance in school excludes a student from going to a dance, but the student isn't interested in going, the negative reinforcer is not going to be productive. Cognitive theory also uses imitation to change thoughts into behaviors. While interning, if a social work intern witnesses a social worker show empathy and allows that client to feel safe, the intern will also model that behavior, as the consequence was something they also strive to establish. People often have thoughts that are damaging and cause poor behaviors. They may not even be aware that they are having them, or that they are in fact influencing their behaviors. Cognitive restructuring is the act of identifying those thoughts, understanding they are doing harm, and learning to replace them with healthier thoughts. Some people may even make these thoughts into whole belief systems and embrace them through the developmental stage or schemas. A client who is constantly feeling anxious due to catastrophic thinking may have learned that they are unsafe. By addressing those thoughts and using cognitive restructuring, a new thought of "I am safe" is formed. In practice, cognitive behavioral theory is a popular modality. This is the mixing of cognitive and behavioral theory. Social workers use many aspects such as active listening and rapport building to have a therapeutic relationship, allowing the client to feel comfortable enough to explore and process maladaptive behaviors and the thoughts that direct them. Social workers will use psychoeducational information to help the client reconstruct thoughts. The relationship of cognitive thought and behavior gives us the ability to change thoughts, emotions, and ultimately actions. As always, social workers must be aware of the need of clients and follow the client's lead for approach of these methods, use of reinforcers, and be culturally competent.
Due to the fact that cognitive theory is an evidence-based practice and is built on that premise of the individual and what makes up that individual, it can be applied in numerous practical settings, such as mental health practices, crisis intervention, child welfare, so for example, adoption or foster home settings, public assistance, such as access benefits or Medicaid or Medicare, family services, healthcare settings, substance abuse, and private practice settings. So as seen in the previous slides, we know that cognitive theory is useful on children, adolescents, young and middle-aged adults, as well as older adults. It's also useful for clients who have been diagnosed or are experiencing depression, anxiety, substance abuse, personality disorders, and schizophrenia. One client system that it should not be used with is for victims of sexual violence or any type of violence during the course of a recent episode of violence or if they are just coming out of that violent situation. It should be used for after the victim of violence has been protected from that abusive person. So there are some settings in which it's not appropriate, but in most settings it is applicable to use the cognitive theory as a form of practice.
The cognitive theory has positive effects on children, adolescents, young and middle-aged adults, and older adults. However, it has found to be more effective in working with children and adolescents because it helps to manage their ADHD symptoms. It controls chemical dependency. It helps with building low self-esteem, and it helps with eating disorders, and it also helps with academic skill problems for kids in school. The cognitive theory has positive effects on children, adolescents, young and middle-aged adults, and older adults. However, it has found to be more effective in working with children and adolescents because it helps to manage their ADHD symptoms. It controls chemical dependency. It helps with building low self-esteem, and it helps with eating disorders, and it also helps with academic skill problems for kids in school.
Cognitive theory limitations. One of the main limitations of cognitive theory is that it does not utilize a person and environment perspective. Instead, it emphasizes individuals and individual functioning. It's not very helpful for social workers working within meso or macro practice. It can also give social workers too much authority and power over their clients and may hinder the voice and choice of clients if it's not handled properly. Perhaps the most important limitation is cultural issues. The practical application of cognitive theory deals with the ways people think, what is considered appropriate and what is considered maladaptive. However, culture influences the way people think about things, their reasoning processes. That is why it has potential to replicate colonization and marginalization. It's not ideal to use with people groups such as Native Americans for this reason. It has the potential to impose values that don't fit into the client's worldview. There are ways to mitigate these limitations. Be culturally sensitive and responsive. Accept clients' core beliefs and values. Validate experiences of oppression and disparity. Highlight personal and cultural strengths.